Hello, welcome back to FPL IQ. I'm Rob, aka FPL Hall. I'm joined again by teacher FPL Lucian, and we're going to be looking at newly promoted Sheffield United back into the Premier League. But again, it feels with newly promoted sides, there's not a lot of positivity in terms of FPL, but we're going to try and find some positives and have a look at how this team line up and play. We'll be looking at the predicted lineup, the strengths and weaknesses, and players to potentially pick or avoid who could be traps from this Sheffield United side. How are you doing, Lucian? How are you feeling about Sheffield United?
It's been a while since we've talked about overlapping centre-backs. Thank goodness we don't have to, because I still struggle with that theory so much. I do prefer the Sheffield United that had Rob House, if you remember Rob House. Whew. And so really it's about Sheffield United having a different identity every time they come up. Full credit to them. And I cannot wait to see what they do in the Premier League besides their one true strength, set pieces. Let's go straight into it.
So predicted lineup, it's another one of those wing-back systems where it could be a 3-5-2, but also a 5-3-2 formation. So in goal at the moment it is Fotheringham, and at the back we've got Egan, Robinson, and Anel.
It's Anel Ahmedhodzic.
He said that himself because I'm too scared to say it. Ahmedhodzic, who has been getting rave reviews and someone that we'll talk about later. We have the wing-backs. Baldock is in there at the moment, who's going to get a lot of people's attentions for a reason we'll talk about later. On the right side with Lowe on the left. In the middle, I've got Norwood, Berg, and Fleck. Now, Norwood and Fleck have question marks because last season they had two guys on loan from Man City. They had McAtee and they had Doyle, who would often play those two positions instead of Norwood and Fleck. So it's another newly promoted side that's got promoted with a couple of key loan players who are no longer at the club. But Norwood and Fleck were a lot more involved than what we saw from the likes of Burnley and Luton, you know, like with Teller at Burnley, for example. So Norwood and Fleck, it's not a huge downgrade on what they had, but it is technically a slightly weaker side than what they were promoted with. And up front, Ndai and McBurney. So how are your thoughts so far about the Sheffield United side?
The last time Sheffield United were promoted to the Premier League, we were laughing at all of their strikers because none of the four could finish. We might see a more concentrated set of chances for their front two instead of spread out between the four strikers. And I do feel that at least this time round, they're not going to depend on defensive solidity. I think in some sense, Sheffield United arguably has the least identity, or at least the least clear identity out of the three promoted sides. And you mentioned in the Luton video that because of player quality, Luton are likely to enjoy their time in the sunshine and go back down. I feel that Sheffield United might have a bigger case in this sense because besides Sander Berge, there are very few players who are actually Premier League quality that can have the chance to prove themselves. At least compared to Luton anyway. That's pretty much it so far.
Well, we'll go straight into the strengths and weaknesses. Now, some teams we can spend hours talking about, and some, from an FPL point of view at least, they're not going to garner a lot of interest. So we'll just try and be more pinpoint and specific with this side. The first one is, you've said it yourself, they've got Premier League experience. They've got players in this side who have been with Sheffield United, not just other teams as well. They've been there, done that with the Premier League. The likes of Luton, which we talked about before, they don't really have that. But we've had Baldock, we've had Egan, we've had Robinson, we've had Fleckberg and Norwood. That midfield three have all been with Sheffield United in the Premier League. McBurney as well. So they do have some experience. Now, some of the players that have been added to the side in the Championship last season have got really great reviews. So I did have it lined up with Anel.
You say it.
Anel.
It's Anel
Ahmedhodzic, the defender. We'll just call him Anel from here on out in case you want to refer to him. I can't always play that clip. And Ndai. Both of those guys were in the team of the season for the Championship. So they are key players for this side. But especially that defender from Bosnia, Anel. Again, I've referenced it a few times in these videos about playing the FIFA video game, and some players get cards often because they're often in team of the week, they're in form, they've done something great for the side, so they get special cards, and he's one of those players that gets special cards. He has been in good reviews from that. Apart from that, I think that's all I've got from the strengths. The formation is pretty standard, especially from a defensive minded side. That wants to keep goals to a minimum. Paul Heckingbottom as manager doesn't inspire me too much, if I'm perfectly honest. They were well clear of Luton, but they were well behind Burnley. And I think was it 11 points behind Burnley? So I think that's it for strengths. They've got Premier League experience, and some of the players that have come in since that time have been doing pretty well for this side. So they may be better than they were when they went down originally, but still not necessarily strong enough to stay in the Premier League. Any strengths that you want to point out for this side?
Well, I absolutely love the fact that they've concentrated themselves onto set pieces, because that is something we can at least rely on to study about Sheffield United. Because I think a lot of people still underrate set pieces, and we treat set pieces as a statistical event, something that we assign a probability to. If we say that corners have a 3% chance of going in, why do so many teams work corners? Why do so many teams have different routines for corners, right? We have to be aware that when you are a team preparing to play a game, set pieces are actually one of the few scenarios that is under your control. Sean Dyche said it himself. For Sheffield United, if they treat set pieces seriously, I'm not saying that they're going to be wizards, at dead balls, and people are going to prefer conceding throw-ins compared to corners or something like that. But at least we know that majority of their chances are going to fall, number one, for the set piece takers rather than the set piece scorers. That was exactly how they beat Burnley earlier in the season during that promotion campaign, where they went 2-1 down at halftime, and then somehow they came back to win 5-2. It was all down to set pieces and how they varied between in-swingers and out-swingers, targeting specific players that they could beat in the air through mismatches. So Ahmed Hodzic could be one of the key factors, depending on whether they want to plant the ball directly on his head with an outswinger, or whether they want to glance one in with him using the near post as his yardstick. For Sheffield United's case, the one of the biggest strengths really is their reliability, because I do feel that whether Norwood, Fleck, Birch, or McAtee, Doyle, whoever plays in that central midfield, their roles as a collective unit is bolstered by the man management skills of Heckingbottom. Heckingbottom doesn't exactly have a distinct, unique style. It's because he's a man manager and he galvanizes the squad much better than anyone that brings a tactical framework in. And I'm glad for that, because it means that you will see all of these players likely to overperform in the early stages of the season while their morale is high. I think that's the best bit about it. We ride Sheffield United's high, and we see what fixtures we can play them in if one of their forwards or wing backs catch form. And that's about it.
A little bit of a strange potential strength here for Sheffield United, if you were to own one of them, maybe not a defender, was that they don't seem to draw very often. It's win or lose with this side. So you might find that if it's a sort of 0-0 game, maybe they'll treat the Premier League differently because, every point matters, right? But they only drew 7 games last season, won 28, lost 11. So it just feels like maybe a potential positive. If you've got an attacking player and they're losing, they're winning, they're still gonna go at it. They're not gonna try and draw. In terms of strengths, though, I think that's it. So for weaknesses, I've already mentioned as well, they're a newly promoted side, so that's automatically going to be a weakness. Promoted with a few loan players, so I said McAtee and Doyle were often 2 of the 3 centre midfielders, and they were loaned in from Man City. And I just don't think they have a manager that particularly inspires with a specific style. So if we take the likes of, when I looked at Luton, and they have a very high press style and gung-ho, but they know they're going to be the plucky underdogs. They have low possession in the Championship. They can take what they already have from that and use that in the Premier League. Burnley have a whole new kind of sort of football under company, which he's taken maybe some of that idea or mentality from his Man City days. I look at Sheffield United and I just think I don't see quality in the attack. I'm maybe being a little bit harsh on Ndiaye, because he was one of only 2 Championship players last season who got double digits for goals and assists. So he got 14 goals and 10 assists. And the Coventry striker, was it Victor Gyökeres? He's actually gone on to a big club now. He was out and out the best striker. But the fact that Ndiaye got 14 goals and 10 assists is good if you were going to try and go there. So there's a strength that striker is okay. There's just too many weaknesses. No particular play style. I don't think they've got Premier League quality. They seem to have definitely one of the smaller squads, especially in midfield. They've got a lot of strikers between 5 and 5.5 million, but I don't think they've got a lot of central midfielders. I think they're going to have to be a little bit active in the transfer market. But yeah, it's easy to sit here and just say newly promoted side, they're going straight back down, but they're not. Burnley could offer us a different kind of football. Luton have their own style of sit back, soak up the pressure and hit them on the counter and do some pressing. I'm not feeling anything from Sheffield United. Are there any weaknesses that you want to talk about?
We don't know how they will win games. As much as I like to press on their set piece prowess, I don't know how they're going to even earn those set pieces in the first place. I don't see Sheffield United as a team that will dominate possession decently enough to win set pieces. I don't see them being long ball merchants that, Brentford demonstrated when they were promoted to the Premier League using Ivan Toney as their pivot. So I think Sheffield United has a lot of work to do in terms of just keeping the ball in possession, cycling it through the initial third, and dealing with a lot of these high press systems that most Premier League teams use anyway. So Sheffield United, I think, the biggest glaring weaknesses in terms of FPL, not in terms of strength, is that we don't know how they will win games, and therefore we don't know who will win those games. The thing about Sheffield United is that we keep saying 3-5-2, but they actually transition quite often between the 3-5-2 and the 3-4-3. That depends on the transition of one man, James McAtee. Sometimes he plays in deep midfield against stronger opponents, and sometimes he will play as one of the number 10s further forward alongside Ndai. I really can't tell right now because they don't demonstrate any consistency in terms of running beyond the number 9. Even if their wing backs did get involved, it's not as if the wing backs average the most crosses per game or they have had the most headed goals per game. It's all about set pieces. So I think somehow, some way, they've got to either rely on transition or very good long ball play just to have possession in the final third before they work on their set pieces. We'll really look out for that. But as of now, we can at least safely say they're stronger than the league in neither, because the Premier League has quite a lot of set piece merchants as it stands.
If I was forced to look at this side, I would probably look at the defence. We'll go on to the top picks in a moment. Saying about getting goals, where they're going to get them from. McBurney was we saw his poor finishing in the Premier League before. That's the same in the Championship. You'd think dropping down the level, he'd be more clinical or less pressure or whatever it is. But he got 13 goals. That's not too bad. 2 assists, but 19% goal conversion, 61% shot accuracy. It's just mid, is what the kids would say. It's not even mid. It's lower than that. It's easy to stick the boot in, but we'll go into some players to potentially pick. And the first one for me is Baldock. 4 million potential. There you go. We've talked about 4 million defenders. You've got Bell, and you've Luton. You've got Bayer at Burnley, and you have Baldock, who, a couple of seasons ago when they were in the Premier League, he was a person everyone was looking at when he was worth. What did he used to be worth? 5 or 5.5? What he used to be worth 4.5, and he finished the season at 5 million. And then that was the first season in the Premier League, and then the second season in the Premier League, he was 5.5 million, who finished the season in 4.9 because they obviously got relegated. But we're looking at a player that originally has been 4.5 or 5.5 million, who is now worth 4. That's been shown with the percentage of ownership. He's got 7% ownership, which is quite high for a newly promoted side. Again, if you're a more attacking manager, some of us or a lot of us are going 3-5-2, and we'll just have a second or third sub defender who is worth 4 million, as cheap as we can go. If you are the more risky manager because he's got more attacking potential, you go Baldock. But there is a chance where he doesn't play as many games as you think. Bell is potentially going to play every single game for Luton. Bayer, when he's fit, is going to play most games for Burnley. Baldock could get rotated out. So if you're a manager who just wants to have a little bit of a risk with that 4 million, he's going to be the one that you're going to go for rather than the other two. And I've put here any of the centre-backs for Sheffield United, because if I was looking at this team, it would be in the defence. They're all 4.5 million. It's not the same system as it was. You said about overlapping centre-backs. In the past, Sheffield United defenders were attractive because they had a unique, at the time, kind of overlapping centre-backs, and they were lovely to watch in that first season of the Premier League. Don't feel as though that's the same team anymore. So if I had to choose a second, it would be Anel Ahmedhodzic. But apart from that, force me to choose a third one, I'd just say the goalkeeper, because he's probably going to get a lot of shots on him. And if he can make some saves, he might get some save points, but I don't particularly trust clean sheets. But that's 3 picks if you had to force me. The only one I would truly recommend is Baldock if you want a risky 4 million defender rather than a 4 million centre back who's probably going to play most games. Any players that you're looking at for Sheffield United?
Justin Dye, if I were to take Sheffield United seriously. Sheffield United don't have the same strength of fixtures like some teams do, such as Nottingham Forest that we've talked about in a previous video. Ideally, you'd not, like, even if you worked out the perfect rotation for a 4 million one body Sheffield United guy, there you have almost no incentive to bring them in. Like, there's almost no chance of Sheffield United displacing one of your starting 3 defenders. I'm actually looking more to attack because I do feel that a lot of us will begin with 6 million, 6.5 million strikers at the start of the season, and one of these promoted teams has to catch fire. It's either Clinton Morris from Luton, Burnley's whoever, or Ndai from Sheffield United. Because I have watched the montage of Ndai's goals, and a lot of them are actually poacher-based, where he's actually in the right place at the right time. That is a skill. It's not something where you're positioned, that you're trained in, training routines. So I do feel that we will have a discussion probably about game week 4 to game week 5 for Sheffield United when Ndai probably gets 1 goal in 4. And we look at it and go, okay, he's probably the standout 5.5 striker, if not my pet pick from Wolves, which we will talk about in the far future. Yeah. Otherwise, I wouldn't touch the defenders as of yet until I see them have a reliable way of earning set pieces, let alone scoring from them.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. Just the idea of like the key people from each of these newly promoted sides. And you said Carlton Morris at Luton, he's vital. 20 goals that he got with 7 assists. He's clear at Luton. Brownhill's such a key player for Burnley. Teller, but they've not managed to bring him back because he was on loan from Southampton. But they've got that as a talisman, and it definitely falls down to Ndai as the attacking man here. I said earlier, 14 goals, 10 assists is great. And whichever club has their key player, their talisman to get into the Premier League and perform to similar levels at what they did in the Championship, that's going to be the key. But you're also right in saying, like, you're going to need the perfect storm of fixtures where every single player you have pretty much has a really tough game, and Sheffield United are playing Luton at home. And that is when you will actively play your Sheffield United player, right? There's never really going to be another time when you're going to say, okay, Newcastle's got Aston Villa, I'm going to play him over my Sheffield United player. My Bournemouth striker's playing Luton at home, I'm going to go with him over my Sheffield United player. There needs to be a perfect situation to bother putting these in your side. So in terms
They'll be part of the conversation. Sorry, Rob. They'll be part of the conversation in game week 11, probably when we use our first wildcard, because the home games from then on will be Wolves, Bournemouth, Liverpool-ish, Brentford, Luton, West Ham. So that's when they'll be part of the conversation.
And because this is pre-season, it's not what we're going to be looking at now, unless you really hold that wild card and you're really going to bring in a very, very early transfer. In terms of players to pick, I think people might look towards FPLIQ and Norwood from their previous Premier League times, but I already said they weren't the key players that got promoted, and they're not the same team as they were before. Oh, sorry, that's your note. Mine's thin squad, lack of quality, and 2 out of the 3 centre mids not starting. But your point is Norwood and FPLIQ.
Yeah, of course. I mean, set pieces are usually a volatile thing, especially when you upgrade yourself from Championship to Premier League level, because, well, set pieces have to be complex enough to outsmart opponents. Gone are the days where we have a 3-man rugby team that literally creates a wall to block defenders so that one man gets free. Nowadays we have flick-on based set pieces. We have set pieces that intentionally go too far and capitalize on the second phase. We have set pieces that rely on multiple people attacking exactly the same zone. We have, because the Premier League is evolving just as fast as attack. The defenses are evolving just as fast as attack. So in that sense, the team that works the most on set pieces gives them a unique advantage. Will Sheffield United do the same thing? I hope so, because that would be ideal for FPL. But as it stands, I can only assume that set piece takers will be assister to the assister, and that's where I feel set piece takers will be their trap for now.
Okay, so I've just given these guys a 3 out of 10, which is higher than what I gave for Nottingham Forest, and that's because Ndiaye could do all right, double digits for goals and assists. Baldock's only 4 million, and he could be a starting right wing back. The goalkeeper Foderingham could face a lot of shots on goal. Anel Ahmedhodzic has come with a very glowing reputation. So there's a couple of players that might make your side throughout the season, but certainly not at the start. What would you give these guys out of 10?
A 0.
0?
Yeah.
All the
we
way
are
down.
only... They have too many players that are not 4.0 million. I think Baldock's only part of the conversation because he is 4 million. If we had more Sheffield United players at 4 million, we'd consider.
Yeah, because it's like I said in the Nottingham Forest video, these guys, for 4.5 million, you could get a Newcastle defender or a Brighton defender or a Villa defender. FPL could have been a little bit more generous with the pricing has been easygoing, let's say, for a lot of the FPL players. They could have actually lowered it a little bit for the newly promoted sides to try and get people like I don't sound mean here, but who in their sensible mind is going to choose a 4.5 million Sheffield United defender over a Brighton, Aston Villa, Newcastle?
Or even Forest. Even Forest's fixtures at home are good in the opening stages.
Yeah. So why would you? You wouldn't. I think that's shown in the ownership stats. I know Baldock's 7% because he's 4 million. All the other ones are under 1%, and some players here with 0%. So there you go. But that's it for our video on Sheffield United. Hope you guys enjoyed it. But we have a slightly brighter team to talk about with players in there that people will definitely be interested from, particularly from game week 3, and that's Tottenham Hotspur. New players, new manager, new system. I think it's going to be a really, really good one. But thanks for joining us today for Sheffield United, and as always, have a good one.